Hi, today I'm going to show you how to make a pastry cream cake, which is a super easy cake, very impressive, very delicious. I've probably made it over 100 times at this point in my life. It's a really simple cake. It is an oil-based cake, so it's super soft and the crumb is very tender. And you can always add in different flavoring elements to the cake itself. You could put in almond extract, or like me, I'm adding in a little lemon zest to this as well. Let me show you how to make it. To start, I'm taking my small mixing bowl here, and I'm gonna be adding my dry ingredients. So I have my all-purpose flour, my white granulated sugar, the baking powder, and a little bit of salt. I'm gonna include all of the measurements for this in the description below, but I'm just gonna whisk this together. In another bowl, I'm gonna be mixing my wet ingredients here. So I have my egg, my oil, some whole milk, vanilla extract, and sour cream. I'm just gonna whisk this together till it comes together. For this, I'm using just one 8-inch baking pan, but what I'm gonna do is actually line it. And the easy way to do this is to grab yourself a piece of parchment paper and fold the parchment paper basically into a square. And once you get into a square, what I'm gonna do is actually meet these two corners across from each other and just fold that a couple of times. Just like this, until you get a cone shape. And then what I'll do is I'll measure from the very center of the pan to the outside, and I'll make a little incision just to mark exactly where it should be. From there, I'm going to make a little rounded cut, like so. And then we have a piece of parchment perfect for the pan itself. I have this nifty little oil spray bottle that I've been using. I'm just gonna give this a little spritz on the inside here, and then place my parchment down on the inside. So this makes sure that it's oiled basically everywhere, all over the sides, and then the bottom is protected as well, so the cake will release very easily. Next, I'm going to be folding in the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients here. I say fold because you don't want to mix this in super hard. You don't want to develop any gluten. You basically just want the mixture to come together, but I'm turning the bowl as I'm mixing in, just being very light and gentle till everything comes together. And of course, this is just going to make one 8-inch round that I'm going to cut into two, but if you wanted to make more, you could easily just double this recipe and fill it out into 2 baking dishes. So this is what I'm looking for. Everything is like mixed together. From here, I'm going to dump this into our greased 8-inch baking pan. Just like so. And then I like to give it a few taps just to level it out, knock out any big air bubble, and then I'm gonna pop this into the oven. All right, while the cake is baking, this is gonna be a great time to work on our pastry cream. And the pastry cream that I use is a cornstarch and egg-based pastry cream, 2 cups of milk, and 1/4 cup of sugar. I'm basically bringing the milk and the sugar, melting it, making it hot, because what we're going to be doing is tempering this with our eggs, our cornstarch, and our sugar mixture to make the pastry cream itself. While the milk and the sugar are heating up, I'm going to take my eggs. So this is 2 egg yolks and 1 whole large egg, sugar, and my cornstarch. And I'm gonna mix these together. So while I'm mixing it, I'm almost looking for it to get a little paler in color and a little bit thick. So you'll see that transformation as I continue whisking. Okay, perfect. So this is what I'm looking for here. So it's a lot more pale in color, and it looks like it's thickened up. The volume has increased as well. This is ready to go. We're just waiting for the milk to heat up. For this portion here, some bowls have like a little rubberized non-slip bottom. I don't think it's enough sometimes, so I like to put down a damp paper towel and set the bowl on top of that, because we are gonna be whisking a hot liquid into this, and I don't want it moving around too much. The milk has come to the proper temperature. You can see there's steam coming off of it. It's not coming to a boil, but all of the sugar is definitely melted. And then what I'm gonna be doing is slowly incorporating this into the egg mixture, bringing it up to temperature, so warming up the eggs. And we're doing this so that way when we put it back on the stove, the eggs aren't gonna curdle. So I'm just gonna add a little bit at a time. Once you get about half of the mixture in there, you can just add in the rest all at once. This looks great. If you have any dribble, make sure you wipe that off. That way it doesn't burn on the stovetop. But I'm gonna add this back into the pot here. And we're gonna take this over to the stove on a medium-low heat. Back over at the stove, we're just gonna continue whisking. It doesn't have to be like a vigorous whisking, but you definitely wanna keep it moving. So I've been whisking for just a couple minutes now, and you can see it's almost like it's increasing in volume. And some of that foam is starting to increase in volume as well. This is typically what happens just before it begins condensing and thickening. And it might seem like you're sitting here for a long time whisking and waiting for it to come together, but it happens very, very quick. So you might be stirring for 4 or 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden it's just gonna get really thick. As it begins heating up and getting a little bit thick, like you can tell there's some resistance as the whisk is going through it, then I'll start stirring a little more heavily. The biggest thing here is you don't want it to scorch on the bottom, because as soon as it scorches on the bottom and you're whisking it, all of that scorched flavor is gonna come up through the pastry cream itself. But here, you'll see that it's beginning to thicken. Those bubbles kind of went away and now it's turning thick. The consistency is changing and it happens really, really quick. So as soon as it gets to this stage here, I'm gonna take it off the heat. You could see, literally it comes together so quickly. It's the coolest thing ever. So I've got 2 tablespoons of butter here and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And you could use vanilla bean in this as well, but I'm using vanilla extract. And we're just gonna whisk this in just until the butter is completely incorporated, just like so. But look at that. Great consistency. I'm going to be adding this fine mesh strainer onto the bowl, and we're just gonna pass through the pastry cream. So we're pouring this in. Putting it through this fine mesh sieve is a way to make sure that you get a completely smooth pastry cream. Perfect. All right, all of it went through. I'm just gonna scrape the bottom here, like so. This plastic wrap is going right onto the pastry cream itself, directly onto it. You don't want any air touching it. So I like to push around it while I'm putting the plastic wrap on, just to get rid of as much air as possible. And then this is going into the fridge to chill. And it'll need to chill for a couple of hours. You want it to be really cold, because this we're actually piping into the cake itself. This will be the center layer, and then on the very top, there'll be a layer of pastry cream as well. The cake has been baking for about 35 minutes now, just setting out a wire rack. I ended up poking it a little bit here about 10 minutes too early, because it looked like it was starting to brown, but it still needed a little more time. But you can see some visual cues would be the browning just around the edges, and then the cake itself, when you take it out, it doesn't sink in. That's a big indicator if you've taken it out too early. But this cake just starts to get a little golden brown on the top, and then again, those edges just around it almost look like it's separating from the sides of it, and this means that it's good to go. Alrighty, so the cake has been cooling for about 30 minutes now. The pan is warm, but I'm just taking a spatula here, running it along the edge. There's no sticking, but I just like to make sure that it's gonna come out 100%. Can never be too safe when it comes to cake, especially when you spend all this time making it. So I'm just gonna place my hand here and allow the cake to come out. I'm gonna peel off this piece here and set the cake down. And then from here, I'm gonna allow this to come to room temperature completely, so completely cooled. And the reason why is we want the crumb to be nice and set, because we're gonna cut off this top piece here, and then we're also cutting this cake into 2 slices. So in order to do that, it has to be completely cooled. The cake has been cooling here for just about an hour and a half. I'm gonna go ahead and remove it from the cooling rack. I'm gonna set this here on the actual stand itself. And I'm just taking a sharp knife. You can use a serrated knife or like a carving knife. Those work really well, but we definitely don't want to go in here and start hacking it with a dull knife or a dull serrated knife. So I'm just gonna go in, find kind of where it's at its most uneven, because I want to try to make this as level as possible. So I see right about here, I'm just gonna make some slices. The reason I like the turntable is because you can get an even slice all the way around with the knife, just like so, and then we'll cut into the middle. Ta-da! Same concept here. Now I'm going to find the centermost part. So I found exactly where I want it, and then I'm just gonna go around again, making cuts. And I don't wanna hack into it. I'm just letting the knife do the work until it gets all the way around, like so. Here we have the top half, and then the bottom half. We are in the home stretch here. What I have is 2 cups of heavy whipping cream. To that, I'm gonna be adding 4 tablespoons and sifting it in of powdered sugar. And I do wanna sift it because this whipped cream is going to go around the cake. And so I wanna make sure that there aren't any lumps. These tiny little pellets here that you see I definitely don't want in the cake. And then I have 2 teaspoons of just vanilla extract that I'm putting in here as well. You can do this in a stand mixer if you prefer, but I'm just gonna whip it by hand, so this may take a couple minutes. We need to whip it until it's stiffer peaks. We don't wanna over whip it and turn it into butter, but we do need it very, very stable. The powdered sugar helps with that as well. It starts to come together pretty quickly, so you can see it's getting thick, but this will be ready in just a couple of minutes. Okay, perfect. So that's exactly what we're looking for here. When I put the whisk in and I pull it out, those peaks kind of like hang on to their shape. I have some beautiful strawberries, blackberries, and blueberries. When it comes to the berries, really you can use whatever you want. Any of the berries, you could even put raspberries in here, I've done before. The strawberries are gonna be like the biggest component here. If you are going to use any berries, definitely use the strawberries, they look beautiful. For the decoration itself, we're gonna set aside some of these strawberries that look like they're about the same size. That's kind of what we're looking for because those are gonna be our decoration going around the outside of the cake itself. So I see there's a couple in here that look like this that'll make some really good slices. So we're gonna slice these just about 1/4 of an inch thick and then decorate them around the outside of the cake. So I'll set aside these here. These look great. They'll make good slices that'll look really pretty around the outside of the cake. I'm just gonna dice up the remainder of these strawberries. I'm gonna set the blackberries off to the side, and then the blueberries we're gonna leave whole. I'm gonna put the bottom of the cake down first, but I'm gonna add a little cream just to the bottom to hold the cake a little steady. All I'm gonna do is go around and pipe a border around here, a pretty thick border. If there are any gaps, that's perfectly fine because we're gonna go around this entire cake with whipped cream as well. Here is the pastry cream. It's set up completely. You can see it's thick, but it holds its shape. It's very nice. And then all we're gonna do is pipe an even layer on the inside of the cake. And you don't have to use a piping bag. You could spoon it in here and it would be perfectly fine. The next step is we're going to be adding the fruit. So we are gonna have fruit on the top of the cake, but we also wanna put fruit in the center of the cake. And this can be fairly haphazard. It doesn't have to be organized. And then the strawberries, I'm just gonna sprinkle in and around. All right, and then I'm just giving these a light little press. So we're gonna place the layer of cake on top of this now. I want this facing down to make the top as even as possible. The next thing we're gonna be doing is coating this in the whipped cream. So you can either use a plastic utensil or a metal one. The first step is gonna be filling in the gaps around the side of the cake. So I am taking the pastry bag here and just going around the entire thing. And then once you have that, we can actually start piping just the whole outside. Once you have a layer, we're just going to go around and start smoothing it. All right, now I'm gonna go into the top and just add a thin layer around the top of it. And then using the spatula, I'm just pulling in very lightly. This top is going to get covered in some decoration. So again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We just want it to all be coated. I'm just gonna go in with a paper towel and clean up the very bottom lip here, just to get rid of some of that extra whipped cream. I'm just gonna go around the cake. This is both for decoration and then also to hold in the pastry cream that we're putting on the top. And if you would like, you could mimic this on the bottom as well, which I am going to do. I just have my pastry cream here and we're just going to pipe a layer around the top. Doesn't need to be thick. We're basically just putting a thin layer on the top and this is where our fruit is going to sit. What I like to do is just use the back of a spoon, even it out, and you're trying to push the pastry cream almost just to the border of where you piped that whipped cream design. All right, so the top of the cake itself is really up to you how you want to decorate it. So I think for this in particular, I'm actually just gonna take some of the leftover berries here and just plop them on the top of the cake. And because I have some of those gorgeous blackberries, I'm gonna add these in too. I like to slice them into halves if I'm gonna use them because if you leave them whole, it's a little bulky looking. And so this lays down much, much easier. Perfect. And you could certainly leave it exactly like this, but I like to over embellish just a little. So I'm actually gonna take the blueberries and just border it around the whole cake. Beautiful. And I think because of all the blackberries and the blueberries that are up here, I actually need to put some strawberries in here just to break up some of the colors. So we'll add these sporadically, some more strawberry slices. For the exterior of the cake, all I'm going to be doing is taking those strawberry slices and just placing them on the actual cake itself, and they will stick into the cream. There we go. So it's just a border of the strawberries. All right, and here we are. It is a very special cake. It's very easy to make. You can decorate it however you want. It's very beautiful and very delicious. So I hope you give this a try. Enjoy.